Did you know actually there is an easier way to create JavaScript objects? In this video, you will know what are the ES6 classes, constructors, inheritance, and static methods. What are ES6 classes? Well, ES6 is shortcut for ECMAScript 2015. It is an easier syntax to create JavaScript objects. And if you remember from the previous tutorial, to create a constructor function, we created a constructor function person, right? Now I will create this with the ES6 classes, class syntax. We just need a class keyword, obviously. And again, the name of the class is going to start with the capital letter. And now we have a constructor function here. The constructor function is going to be the first function will be executed once you call that class, okay? And we will receive name and age properties to that function. And because the constructor function is going to be the first thing to be called, you can imagine that it will also create an empty object in the memory. And to add some properties again to that empty object, we have this keyword, which is the placeholder name for that object. And we will just register the data in that object with the dot notation. Well, that's how we register the data to the JavaScript objects, right? And that's it. Now, if we want to add a method, all we have to do is to write it inside of the class syntax. And if we want to create an object by using that class, we need to call the class name by the new keyword and pass the data in it, okay? Now let's open the developer tools on the browser and the console. Let's console.log, the person one. There it is, our person object. And if we open it and go into the prototype property of that object, say hello is in it, okay? Now let's take it one step further and create a student class which is going to inherit from the person, which means that you don't want to create it because the student is going to carry everything inside of the person. You don't want to create everything from scratch. You want the student to inherit some of its properties, methods from the person class. How this is going to happen? Well, students, we need the class keyword, class, we are going to write the class keyword, and student, the name of the class, extends, and the name of the class we are inheriting from, and it's the person, right? Okay. Now the constructor. We must pass to the constructor as a parameter everything from the parent class. Okay, so the parent class here is a person. I must give those parameters to the constructor of the child class, which is in this case it's the student. I have a typo here. Okay, and with the super function, what we are doing is we are executing the parent plus constructor first. And then the additional parameter is added to the object with this keyword. Okay, so what the student is going to have is going to have a study method, maybe. And we are just going to console.log print to the console the subject she's studying. Okay, that's it. Now let's just create a student object. All we have to do is const student1 and call the class name by the new keyword and pass the data. Now let's cancel that dot student1. There it is, the student object, and if we open student object prototype, we have the static class. And if we open this chain prototype, which she is using from the person class, you can see we also have a reach to say hello. Now that means I can call the student, I can call the student one with say hello, like that. And hello John is on the console. That is how inheritance works in ES6 classes. As the next topic, I want to speak about the static functions. Let's create a class, math helper class. And in the math helper class, I just want to create a method. And if I want it to be a static method, I just add the static keyword in front of the method. That's all. So I have a add static method, and it is returning a plus b basically. How I can execute that method? How can I call it? Okay. All we have to do is to call that method by the class name, and that's it. It will execute. We use the static keyword if we don't want to pass an function to the object, but to register it to the class itself. Why do you want that? You want to use it in utility functions. What is a utility function? A utility function is a function that will do some kind of a tasks, not necessarily on an object. And what does it mean? Let's think about a push method belong to the arrays. When we apply the push method on an array, imagine we have an array, const array1. And what we are doing, if we want to apply the push method on an array1, we say array1 dot push for, and push is going to add the for to the end of the array. That tells us push is a method, change has an effect on the array1 object. Because in JavaScript, arrays are objects. We have an array constructor as well, and that's how we create the arrays. And the push method is changing a shape of an object by adding a new data to it. But a utility function, what are the examples of the utility functions in JavaScript? For example, math, the math library. Math library has the math object. You can use the, for example, the random method through that object. And what the random is going to do is it's going to produce a random number. It's not changing anything. It just does a task. In our example, add method is not changing anything. It just receives two numbers and returns it. That's why the static keyword, static methods are very useful if we don't need to carry a function through an object.